Richard?
Okay, well, my name's Richard Butcher, and I started as a country apprentice in a little depot called Casino, and that was in 1950. You had to do workshop experience. I was transferred to Sydney, which I started in blacksmith shops number 1 and 2, which were the oldest here, 1884. Heritage value to them there, and from there I did a lot of hard study. I was elevated the position to the assistant welding engineer for New South Wales Government Railways at the Wilson Street Testing Laboratories, which is on the other side, carriage work side. This is the locomotive side.
So you obviously, I'm going to give you a shot to do this, Richard, you obviously know a lot about Everleigh.
Yes, I know everything from the foundations up, which most people don't.
How? How do you know so much?
Well, I just had a great involvement. When I went to school, I wasn't that bright at school, but when I joined the Railways Institute nurtured and fostered me, and in no time I was holding a senior engineer's position in the Railways department there. Dad started here in 1925 really, so kind of was part of in the family, following family tradition. But then my grandparents, Pop, we used to call him Pop Bradley, who worked at the greenhouse at Everleigh. After I left the Railways and went into TAFE, I discovered that the chief mechanical engineer, famous man Edward Lucy, that my grandparents were related, their parents were actually the Lucys, but I was never told that. Little boys should be seen and not heard.
Did your father talk much about his time at Everleigh?
No, not really. He talked more about the depot Enfield. Not the Everleigh. No, there wasn't much about Everleigh really. Yeah.
But as a child, do you remember him getting up and going to work, and what did he look like?
Oh yes, well that was during the war, because when the war started we were transferred to Casino because you were an essential service. And of course as a young child I used to go to the locomotive depot because you wouldn't see your parents, to be away 7 days a week. And I was very privileged, 10 or 12 years of age, driving steam locomotives around there, which in the books I've written I can't say anything about that. Yeah.
You're not allowed to because it was illegal?
Oh, no, not illegal. Same as taking photographs. You weren't allowed to take photographs. That was a no-no. But thank God a person did take photographs, whether it was at Everleigh, whether it was Casino. And this is very important there, because I know my depot at Casino, I've got the coal stage in the depot on the National Register. It's got to be preserved forever. And I've fought for this place too at Everleigh in the same way since 1991.
What happened in 1991?
I wrote a 56-page report to the federal and state governments about why Everleigh, one of the world's great railway workshops, and why I say that, I was a member of the Smithsonian Institute. And the Smithsonian Institute quoted where Everleigh is the finest Victorian era steam railway workshop left in the world. And I've pursued that ever since.
Passion for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
It's amazing when you walk around, like I went into where the Davy press room, and just the smell. It's the most incredible thing of what can take you back to remember, not just about a time in history, but about what was important to us, where our values were. And
well, it was hard going. The work there was very hot. When the ingot of steel, which was 5 tonne, there's an overhead crane in that section near the Davy press. When the ingot of steel came out, of course, it was glowing red, white heat. And in that era, you were sooks if you wore any protective clothing. So your clothing would be actually on fire. There'd be smouldering while you were doing the work, and there'd be hot pieces of steel laying around your feet. You had to wear safety shoes. You may walk on a hot piece of steel. Even the weight of the tools to pick a tool up and put underneath the press, because it was only a squeeze action, a slow action there, and like a drop hammer, which was much faster there. But it was hard toil and hard work. There was a gang of 5 people and a man driving the overhead crane, Ted Bocock, for many years there. Yeah. Tough going, but now if you went to the other hammer, which is called the double arch hammer, that was all fire and brimstone, because every time the hammer hit, the sparks would fly from one end of the shop to the other end of the shop. If you got hit by it, you couldn't stop work. There may be 12 pieces of steel in the furnace and you had to keep working, but after you finish you'd look down your arms and you see blood running down off your arms, because the heat of the steel, when it would hit you, and they had oil in the blocks to release the job from the blocks, it would fly and hit you, and you had to keep working then. It wasn't until it was all over that you kind of came back to earth, and you waited for the next heat, what, be another 2 or 3 hours before the next lot of steel got hot to come out and start working again. Very fascinating. The other thing too was the people that worked there. A lot of them were from overseas countries, new Australians there, but they were wonderful people. We learnt new haircuts, we learnt ways how to cook new meals. We learnt a lot from those people, and a lot of them became wonderful Australians. Credit to our country.
A lot of Italians?
Not so many Italians, no, Czechoslovakians, Malta. Germans, I had a chap who was standing in shop number 2, not far away from here. One day I looked at him if he had a Nazi uniform on, but I was a blacksmith. I said, you stay on that side of the anvil, I'll stay on this side, and that was it. But he never smiled, but it was fun, really. It was fun. I had another bloke, Jack Feely. Jack, in number 2 workshop there, he was a blacksmith striker, and I used to have 2 of those, the work I used to do. Jack was always worried about the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. And I didn't have a clue what he was talking about.
Richard, thank you so much. That seems tiny and small, but that was wonderful.
Good.
Now, just before we go, just so that we can tag along, would you mind just telling me about your books, the books that you've produced, and what it's taken for you to do it?
Okay, well, the first book I wrote was Steam Days, North Coast, New South Wales.
Sorry, could you say that again more slowly?
Yes, the first book I wrote and produced and published was Steam Days on the North Coast of New South Wales. It's all about railways, but it does include aircraft because the aircraft industry was very young, plus the shipping industry on the North Coast, on the Richmond and Clarence Rivers. Then I got involved with the great photographer David Moore and the lady called Caroline Simpson, who produced the book to help save Everleigh, what we could do. She was a philanthropist. And Caroline kind of had an exhibition with David on at the Sydney Art Gallery with Edmund Capon and Company. And I went and looked at the photographs there, which are beautiful photographs. He was a real expert what he was doing. And I said, a lot of your captions, as to writing, is totally wrong. There are a lot of people out there that follow railways around the world, and they will pick that to pieces. So Lady Caroline rang me up one Sunday. I was out on my garage roof painting the roof, and she said, would you be good enough to technically edit my book? I said, oh yeah, okay, that'll be okay, I'll do that. So I went ahead and done that. But then I'd lay in bed at night, say, magnificent photography, but this isn't the story of Everleigh. So 7 years later, at a great expense to me, I produced the book, Richard Butcher's Reminiscences of the Great Everleigh Railway Workshops there. And it came out in 2004, and it's still selling extremely well. And yesterday, a driver rang me from Flemington saying, can I get that book?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
No trouble. No trouble. As I said, it's a long story. It's a very interesting story. I've been fighting for this place. It cost me a fortune. I'm naturally a pensioner these days. I went out and bought electrodes for the job down here. That's welding electrodes for the job last week, $147.
Plus, what are you doing in the other locomotive?
Well, inside the firebox, you've got 3 36-class boilers out here. This is the 59-class locomotive, American Ball one that came into the country in 1952. They've never had new boilers in them. So you're trying to keep the machines running. To buy a new one would be over $2 million worth. So a crowd called Lachlan Valley Railways have come to me and said, as my welding experience here and in TAFE, and as a senior educationist in the education department with TAFE, that's not the first job, but I helped many organisations out over. In 2000, the Paris Museum came to me and said, we're restoring a locomotive 3265, beautiful, painted maroon colour. And they said, no one knows how to metal the crossheads. The things that go really fast. There's something behind us with the crosshead on, pump room. But also all the bearings in the locomotive. So over 4 years, I did all that type of work there. And then the Parramatta people, they have some old steam trams and cable trams that used to run around the streets of Sydney in the 1860s. And I've done major work for them because the skills aren't taught. We don't teach what we used to teach. It's called progress.